All right, let's dive into an absolutely fascinating piece of text today. We're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 8, and honestly, it's packed with some incredible, timeless insights.
Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Deuteronomy chapter 8 in a clear and simple way, step by step. So, picture this. We're standing on the very edge of history. The Israelites have been wandering the harsh, unforgiving desert for 40 long years, and Moses is now delivering his final, urgent instructions right before they finally cross over into the Promised Land. Today's walkthrough is a profound masterclass on memory, gratitude, and the hidden, sneaky dangers of wealth and comfort. We're going to walk carefully through the original Hebrew text, verse by verse, to see exactly what Moses was trying to impart to this brand new generation.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll be covering 1. The desert test. 2. Entering the good land. 3. The danger of prosperity. 4. Remembering your true provider. 5. The final warning. And then we'll wrap up with 6 key lessons and recap.
Okay, section 1. The desert test. Let's look at verses 1 through 6.
The chapter kicks off in verse 1 with a pretty strict baseline. Careful obedience to God's commands is the absolute key to live in, to growing in number, and to finally inheriting this land. But then verse 2 asks the critical question, why? Why 40 years of wandering? Moses tells the people to look back at that brutal wilderness. He explains that God led them through the desert specifically to humble them. The Hebrew phrase here is leman anosha, and to test them, lenasacha. This wasn't just some geographical accident, right? It was a deliberate, controlled environment designed to reveal what was truly in their hearts. Would they actually follow the rules when they were stripped of all their natural comforts and security?
In verse 3, the text explains the actual mechanism of this test. God caused them to hunger, and then he fed them with something completely unheard of, manna. And here's a fun fact. The Hebrew root of this word literally hints at the question, what is it? Man-hu? Because, nobody had ever seen anything like it. But this wasn't just a convenient food source. It was a profound educational tool. Moses says it was to teach them a simple but deeply challenging lesson. Man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. It forced this reality of total daily dependence on God, rather than relying on their own farming skills or storehouses. Every single day required fresh trust.
Now, the text makes sure to balance out this harsh reality with some absolutely incredible miracles. Looking at verses 4 through 6, we see that despite being in this rugged, nasty desert for 40 years, their clothes literally did not wear out. Think about that. And their feet didn't swell. So yes, God afflicted them with hunger to teach them, but he also perfectly preserved them physically. Verse 5 sums this up beautifully using the Hebrew concept of a father disciplining his son, the word me'asir. It says, "Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you." It's a tough, it's a character-building discipline rooted entirely in parental care. And that leads right into the command in verse 6 to observe God's ways and revere him.
Moving right along to section 2, entering the good land. This covers verses 7 through 10.
So imagine the relief here. We transition away from the harsh, dry desert to the promise of an incredibly rich future. Verses 7 through 9 describe a land just flowing with streams, pools, and springs welling up in the valleys. The text lays out the famous Shiva Tamaniim, the 7 species of the land of Israel: wheat, barley, vines, fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. They are trading in a restricted daily ration of manna for an absolute agricultural paradise. The text literally promises them that bread won't be scarce and they will lack nothing. It even highlights industrial wealth, rocks full of iron and hills where they can mine copper. It's the ultimate promise of complete material abundance.
But with all that massive abundance comes a very specific, immediate instruction. Verse 10 gives this famous directive using 3 progressive verbs: va'achalta, vasavata, uveracha. When you have eaten and are satisfied, you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. This right here is the exact biblical origin of Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals. It's a direct instruction about immediate gratitude, the exact moment their physical needs are met. When they finally feel the comfort of a full stomach, they have to verbally acknowledge where that blessing came from before they do anything else.
All right, section 3, the danger of prosperity, verses 11 to 14.
Here is where the tone of the chapter takes a really sharp turn. As Moses points out, prosperity carries a unique and silent danger that the desert simply didn't have. He outlines this literal psychological cycle of pride step by step. Let's walk through it.
First, you eat and you're fully satisfied. Second, you start building fine, comfortable houses and settling down. Third, your wealth compounds, your herds grow, your silver and gold multiply. And then, step 4, the danger strikes. Your heart becomes proud. You start believing your own hype. And step 5 is the tragic conclusion. You forget the Lord your God, the very one who rescued you from slavery in Egypt.
It's a fascinating contrast, really. This perfectly illustrates the core tension of the chapter. On one side, you've got the dreadful desert. It was terrifying, sure, but it kept the people humble, thirsty, and 100% dependent on God for daily survival. On the flip side, you have the good land. It brings wealth and this feeling of total self-sufficiency. But that exact comfort puts them at a massive risk of pride and spiritual amnesia. Their environment completely dictates their mindset. Moses is basically warning them that luxury and abundance are actually a way harder test of character than poverty and need.
Which brings us to section 4, remembering your true provider, in verses 15 to 18.
So how do they survive this test of wealth? Well, Moses says the antidote is memory. They have to consciously force themselves to look backward. In verse 15, he makes them recall just how terrifying the past really was. He specifically reminds them of the venomous snakes and the scorpions. He reminds them of the parched, waterless land and how God had to miraculously blast water right out of a solid flint rock, Tzur HaKalamish, just to keep them alive. By remembering that they were once completely helpless and surrounded by death, they can properly contextualize their current safety. They only survived because of divine intervention.
And this builds to what I think is probably the most famous and definitely the most striking verse in the whole chapter, verse 17. The text just perfectly captures the internal monologue of a successful, arrogant person. It asks if you will say to yourself, Kochi votsem yadi, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. I mean, think about how natural that thought is. You built the house, you planted the vineyard, you mined the copper. It is so incredibly easy to look at your bank account, look at your own 2 hands, and take all the credit for your own success.
But then verse 18 comes in with the ultimate reality check. It says, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Notice the text doesn't deny that the Israelites worked hard. It doesn't say they didn't use their hands, but it clarifies the source of their capability, the koach, the actual strength, the brain power, the health, the opportunity, the very breath in their lungs. The ability to generate that wealth comes strictly from God, and He does it to confirm the covenant He swore to their ancestors. Keeping this specific fact front and center is absolutely crucial to staying grounded.
Section 5. The final warning, verses 19 to 20.
Moses has laid out the whole thing now, the test, the blessing, the danger, the solution. Now, he concludes with a very stark, uncompromising warning about what happens if they fail. The text lays out the absolute cost of spiritual amnesia. According to verse 19, if they do forget the Lord, the natural next step is that they'll turn to follow other gods, bowing down to idols. And if they do that, Moses states point blank, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Verse 20 makes it an impartial cause and effect reality. Like the nations the Lord destroyed before you, so you will be destroyed for not obeying the Lord your God. If they adopt the arrogant, idolatrous ways of the nations that were cleared out before them, they are going to suffer the exact same fate. No exceptions.
All right, wrapping things up with section 6, key lessons in recap, let's look at some practical life lessons.
Now that we've gone step by step through the literal, simple meaning of these 20 verses, let's distill this into something we can use today. Let's start with the number 40. The 40 years in the desert wasn't just a random punishment. The text explicitly tells us it was a necessary period of preparation. It was an incubator designed to build a resilient character. Sometimes, the difficult, dry periods in our own lives are actually the exact training grounds we need. They strip away our illusions of control, and they teach us what we truly must rely on to survive.
So, summarizing our main takeaways from today's explainer. First, hardship builds character and teaches a profound dependence on what really sustains us. Second, we've got to be deeply aware of the psychology of success. Prosperity and comfort very frequently lead straight to pride and forgetfulness. Basically, the more we have, the less we think we need help. And third, the ultimate antidote is gratitude. Whenever you look at your own achievements, your fine houses, and your wealth, always consciously attribute your success and your very ability to produce that wealth to your true provider. Do not fall into the trap of spiritual amnesia.
Which leaves us with a pretty intense final question to think about. When the struggles are over, when your desert is finally behind you and you are sitting comfortably in the good land of your own achievements, will you remember your source in times of success?
Will you give the credit where it is due, or will you say, "My power and my hands produced this wealth"? It is a test every single one of us faces, and how we answer it really does determine everything.
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.